How's it going?
Hello.
We're going to be probably awkward at first because, COVID has been for a while and I haven't done, I think I did one of these a year ago-ish.
Well, maybe a little
awkward,
naturally too.
Yeah.
A bit,
It's been a while, but here we are. I have my friend Velma with me today. Trace has done the last couple years with me, but he is just landing today, and I don't know if he'll be here. He might show up mid-event, so if somebody walks in the door, that's him. We are in New York because the book comes out. My book is called The Falling, and today is the release day.
It's
out today. Lord help us all. I know I was supposed to talk about release week, but it's just today. So today I'm feeling just a little bit like I'm, a lot of anxiety, tornado vibes. But I'm really excited to be here. And tomorrow I'll be seeing some of you in person at the launch event in New York City. I've got my friends here and my people. So yeah, but every time a book releases, this is my feeling, is terrified.
But we're going to have fun. This is all very unscripted, if you will. So we're just, it's a book release happy hour, right? We have our
very full
espresso martinis, and we're going to just celebrate and chat and celebrate this and you.
And celebrate. Yep. Okay. So we do have some audience questions, but first we will.
Well, why don't you just start off by talking about the book? Tell us a little bit about it. Tell us why kind of now, right? I personally know that you worked your butt off rewriting so much of this book and pouring your heart into it. So give us the scoop. I know you talked a little bit about it at the end of the book, as people will see, but.
Yeah, so I know there's kind of a lot of, confusion of, is this the Brightest Stars? Is it the sequel? Is it the prequel? Is it the anything? So basically, during the pandemic, I was reevaluating my entire existence, and I went through the book to reread it to start the third one. And I read the first and second, and I just felt like I could tell that part of me was missing in the story. And as an author, a lot of times when some of my friends who have had the same feeling, you just write the next one and you call it a day, and not every book you write is going to be, your level of good or what you think is good. But I just could not, have that be my destiny for the series, because it's very personal to me. I spent a lot of time and a lot of years, like very formative years of mine in and around military bases. So I felt like I could feel myself kind of touching the story. It's a military romance, but the first book especially is not super heavy on the romance. FYI, it's not super, super heavy on the romance, but there's a whole community of, it's just a different world. Like military life is just a different world. And I felt me almost touching these topics, but being afraid, even though at the time I didn't realize I was kind of avoiding it. And then I started being like, what would happen if I rewrote it? Is that totally nuts? Do people do that? Do people just publish a book? Am I
totally nuts?
Yeah, and then be like, oh, this isn't like what I want it to be, so I'm going to rewrite it. And even when I made that choice, I really wasn't. I just was like, I've got to do something, because this is not, in 100 years when I'm dead and this book is alive, is this something I'm going to be proud of? And I know so many of you loved it. So the original Brightest Stars. So I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart, but I still just had to rewrite it. So I went through, I locked myself in the desert for almost a month by myself, got attacked by 1,000 ants and terrible wind, a couple coyotes, kind of angry Airbnb host, all of that while really digging into the parts that I avoided, and rewrote an entire series basically. So that's why I did it. I don't know how to talk about book plots without spoiling them.
There will be no spoilers in this chat.
Okay, yeah. So there's a guy named Kael and a girl named Karina, and they meet.
Wait, I haven't asked the question. Tell us about Kael and Karina, please.
Okay, so Kael is a soldier, shocker, is a soldier who, okay, no spoilers, okay, the book deals a lot with PTSD. Soldier with PTSD, very young guy who has basically spent his life knowing that going into the army was the most reasonable and kind of only accessible job he could have to take care of himself. Like a lot of the people in the US, you can't just live, you have to. It's a very touchy time for me to talk about politics in the United States, but I will say that being in the military is one of the only ways you can get health care, one of the only ways you can get promised to go to college for free, one of the only ways you can actually feed your family with one income, which is literally not possible these days. Even with people in the army, I know who work really, really hard and deploy multiple times to serve their country, and they still have a feeding their family. So all of my political views aside, I wanted to talk about the struggle of being basically a teenager and going to war before you can even drink a beer in a bar. You can drink a beer, you can buy a gun, you can do all these things, or you can't do all these things, but you can go to war. So it's kind of insane. So Kael is a very young man who tries to navigate what it means to be a soldier, what it means to be a Black soldier in the United States in Georgia, what identity is as a whole. Karina is a young woman who grew up in the military community. Her father was an officer. Those of you who know military life, that's a whole other world than just enlisted. And has kind of fought her whole life to avoid this and never imagined herself dating or falling for a soldier. She has a twin brother named Austin, who I can't really say much about because spoilers, but she grew up with mostly her dad raising her. Her mom was there, but as most of my books, the parents are not super great examples, and the parents have addictions and these kind of things that most of the parents that I knew my whole life of mine, my friends, had. So she's a young woman who really, really tries to be more adult than she is, but she does pay her own mortgage, which is something really that she's proud of. She has severe anxiety, but is undiagnosed. That is a spoiler in the first book. And she is just trying to figure out life like all of us are.
And Kael's kind of very quiet in himself. He's gone through a lot, so he's like, there's a little bit of mystery to who he is and what he thinks and what he feels. How would you describe Karina? Do you think they're different from each other, or do you think, like, what's that dynamic in terms of how they are?
I mean, they're on paper, well, no pun intended, but on paper, they are really different, but really they're exactly the same. Like they have the same thought process, even if they say it differently or express it differently. When it comes to him, she sort of just says literally everything that she thinks. And he is much more reserved. Like there were drafts of this that my editor was like, he does have to speak. Like he's here, but he has to talk. And I'm like, no, but that's not the character. He doesn't have anything to say. He doesn't want to say something that's not important. So,
or not that he doesn't have anything to say, but he's taking it all in, it seems, and like it's all in here, and in here.
And she lives like with her heart on her sleeve, and he very much lives in his own mind. So he's not as, vocal as my previous characters have been, as, male wise, but he definitely does have a lot to say. He just doesn't say it in the way that she does. And also his words, you know, he has to be a lot more careful about things that he says. If he disagrees with something political or with the police or this kind of thing, he has to be much more careful than she does. So he's sort of lived by this, like, you know, be a good soldier mentality to stay safe and stay alive. And she's had the liberty of being able to have whatever opinion she has and not apologize for it. So they're very different, but also very, very similar when you take all of that away.
You know, you talked about that there wasn't a ton of romance in the book, but one of the things, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit tomorrow, spoiler, is that I thought you did a really amazing job of showing all the different moments and conversations of how one falls in love with someone else. It's not these like necessarily like big moments, but it's like a bunch of little moments, a bunch of conversations, and that really shows kind of gradually as she's falling. And I don't think I've ever talked to you about this. I don't know if that's why you chose The Falling as a title, but like that really came through for me, like that slow and gradual like ways that you fall for someone.
It sort of was, actually. So thank you for noticing. I was waiting for someone to be like, because it's like the stage of, so it's like the falling, because for me, you know, we always think, and especially as a romance lover, like most of my favorite romance stories, whether it's books or films, there's these big grand gestures and these like rooms full of roses and the guy showing up to the office and screaming from the rooftop that he loves her. But in reality, unfortunately, that stuff doesn't really happen. So in reality, it's conversations and it's connecting with someone and feeling like you're understood. And for me, there, even just personally, there's literally nothing in the world like feeling like someone understands you. And even when I wrote it, I don't feel like I really understood that. But Karina sort of feels like finally someone knows her.
Sees her.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, in a sense, big time romance, because it's pretty spectacular to kind of see that process of connection, of internalizing all those feelings and kind of, you know, it's all those small little moments, and I loved kind of going through that in the book.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm gonna sign while I talk. So just if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing.
So I'm gonna I also kind of want to talk about what you want. So there's 2 more books coming out in the series, in Kael and Karina's story. What are you hoping that people will kind of take away from it when they go through like the whole story arc?
Oh, I mean, without any spoilers.
No spoilers.
Yeah, because I'm like, there's a lot that happens. I don't know. I don't want to be an author who says like every single thing I write has to tell you a message and you must learn from me because I know all, because I can type on my laptop. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I do hope that people can connect with the sense of, in the beginning, the sense of being lost in the world and like just wanting to like belong somewhere and feeling like someone gets you. Especially second and third book is heavy on mental health. So also that, oh man, it's really hard without spoilers. I literally can't really answer that because the whole series has a very, very one sentence message for me, but I can't say what it is because
I think you once had said to me, if I remember correctly, that it was hope a little bit at the end of it.
I mean, in a way, my version of hope, which I think is very different than
other people.
So it's hope, but yeah. I think my version of hope and it's your, maybe not your version of hope anymore, but mine. It's probably Trace. Hope, but actually, you know what? Even with the ending or the way the story will change, I would still say some hope because, yeah, it is supposed to be hopeful. But you got to read it and see what happens. But Yeah.
So it feels like the perfect transition to maybe talk about the quote that you have at the beginning of the book. Do you want to read it?
Do you want to read it? Trace,
Do
do
you
you want
want
to
to
read
read
it?
it?
Somebody read it out loud. I'm not. I can't. Gummo will read it.
Let's see. Well, there's actually like several meaningful things in the beginning here. Should I read this or should I read this or both? Or what do you want?
Whichever one you felt like
Well,
you were.
it's a little bit related, but I initially was talking about this.
Okay, whichever.
You don't want to read it? You want me to read it?
I can't. I don't want to read it online.
Your book? Okay, so this quote, which I very much love as well, goes, "Maybe I made a mistake yesterday, but yesterday's me is still me. I am who I am today with all my faults. Tomorrow I might be a tiny bit wiser, and that's me too. These faults and mistakes are what I am, making up the brightest stars in the constellation of my life. I have come to love myself for who I was, who I am, and who I hope to become." By Kim Namjoon. I mean, I know why you chose that quote, but do you want to talk about why you chose that quote and what inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that quote, like whenever everyone's like, "Why is it called the brightest stars?" If you know, you know. But if you don't, I think I just like stars. But when I heard that quote, I just thought, wow, because I think so many of us, including myself, I am super self-critical when it comes to my work. Anything else in my life, like personal choices, I'm like, oh, life's life. Anything when it comes to writing or imposter syndrome when it comes to writing, I'm very critical. So I felt like when I read that or heard that quote, when the person that I quoted said it, I just thought like, wow, all these versions of ourselves that were all of my friends literally are always super critical. And I feel like I don't even know how to say it in a way that the quote says it much more eloquently, but definitely it's just about kind of accepting who you are. Like your life is one big constellation, and every single choice you make every day, whether it's good or bad, it's like some of the worst choices I've ever made have actually been the best choices in the long run. But at the time, it feels like the world is ending and you've done all these things wrong. But I think just giving yourself grace and knowing that and accepting you for who you are, because as humans, since the beginning of time, all we do is make mistakes. So just accepting that and being like, okay, but what can I learn from that? What can I do tomorrow? So like, you're still you today. If you do something really, wrong or bad, you're still you tomorrow. So just accepting yourself as a whole and moving on and doing better, basically.
All sides of who you are who you are authentically.
Yeah,
That's what makes you you.
Definitely.
That Kim Namjoon. So I'm going to ask you a few reader questions. So definitely, if you've not submitted your question, please do so. Ask anything. Have you always wanted to be an author and had a passion for writing, or when did that begin?
I definitely was always a reader. I didn't have the audacity to dream about being a writer, to be honest, because I come from a place where being a writer is so unheard of. Like that's not something that as a child I thought, oh yeah, I could be a writer. No way. So I didn't really dream of it because my dreams were very realistic. Like I'm going to be a teacher or I'm going to just make enough money to live. Like I didn't really dream of like, I want to be a scientist or I want to be a writer. But when I became an adult and I realized like, oh, We're back.
We're back, I think, right?
I think. Sorry about that. Okay,
yes,
we're
we're
back.
back.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So just to be clear, I do like things. I like internet. I like Wi-Fi. I like you guys. I just meant at that point in my life, I thought, wow, I can't imagine myself doing any job except for reading. So back before I knew there was such a thing as bloggers and anything that had to do with books, I was like, man, I wish I could just get paid to read all the time. Because I thought, like, I just want to read. I can't. I'm not a writer. And then I started reading stories on Wattpad, which is at the time was like a lot of fan fiction, but now it's basically every genre you can imagine, and then some that you can't imagine and won't until you read it. And I started reading on Wattpad, and I still didn't think about writing. Like sometimes I would have this little thing of like, oh, that must be so cool to just write for fun, because all the stories that I was reading, they were just, normal people like me with jobs and families and school and all these things. And I'm like, wow, that must be so cool. But definitely didn't have the nerve to do it yet. And then I felt like I had read everything on Wattpad, which is not true because there were so many stories, but I just felt like I went through all of the ones that were really, really, really had me addicted. So I, on a random Sunday, just literally was sitting in my room with my son was like crawling on the floor. And the person whose story I was reading posted this thing like, sorry guys, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to finish the story, which as a Wattpad reader is like your worst nightmare. It's like, no, like I will literally get a job to give you the money so you don't have to stop writing the story. So I was like, man. And then I had seen this picture of this band who called One Direction but they had like all these fake tattoos. At the time, none of them had tattoos. Now they all do, but at the time they didn't. And I just like the story just kind of played in my head. But my life, pretty much all day, every day, there's some version of a story going on in my head. I just didn't realize that wasn't everyone's mind.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So for me, everywhere I go, I'm always thinking of like, oh, that person, like I'm creating a story all the time. And I thought that everybody did that. And
when was this when you started writing?
2013. Yeah, 2013. But literally my whole life I lived this way of just like constantly like, if I see someone at the grocery store, I'm like, oh, I bet she bought that green dress with their ex-husband, and I bet they don't even like, just stories constantly in my head. And didn't know that wasn't normal. And then I just came up with this entire, like this whole human and this other whole human. And I was like, oh man, maybe if I just wrote it, like if I wrote it down, no one's going to read it because it's Wattpad. There's people update, or especially at the time, it was like you upload a chapter, like I can't even imagine what the data is now, but probably like every 30 seconds or something insane. Someone's writing a chapter. So I'm like, no one's going to know. I didn't have like social media really. I had like a 1D Stan Instagram account. I didn't have like any Twitter, nothing. So I'm like, no one's going to know if I write this. I'm not going to tell anybody. I literally didn't tell anyone until after I had like millions of reads. I'm like, no one's going to know. And who cares? Like, so I did it and I wrote the first chapter and literally immediately was like, okay, I have to write the next one. And then that went on for a year. And then I got a publishing deal.
It's insane. Really insane. Speaking, you mentioned genres. Have you ever wanted to try another genre outside of romance?
Yes, but no matter what I write, even if it's a thriller, and every single person ends up, there's going to be some kind of romance, no matter what. Like that's my jam.
Did you? Someone asked, did you like reading as a child? How can I get my kids and myself to love reading?
I mean, I did love it, to be honest. But no one else in my family did. So, and none of my friends did. Literally no one except for my teachers liked to read. So, I just loved it. I don't know what it was, but I would say that friends I had whose parents tried to get them to read, it really backfired. So I think just finding the right book which is easier said than done, but just try not to take it too seriously. Try not to think, oh, I have to read to fill some box in my life and feel like I'm doing something right, because reading is supposed to be an escape and it's supposed to be magical experience. So try to find a book that maybe you don't think you would typically read. I would try something like romance is always the entry drug to reading, man. But with your kids, I would encourage it, but not, I honestly wouldn't push it too hard because kids rebel naturally, but maybe just reading to them. Also, depending on their ages, I don't know their ages, but like with my son, I'm trying really hard to not like force him to like books, but I read him a book at night because I'm like, please like books, please.
That's how I was too. I fell in love with reading at an early age, and now being a mom, like both my boys do not like reading. And so I try and just give them access to different types of stories and genres, because how could you not, right? Like, it's so crazy. But no one in my family was a reader either. So it's just like, and I couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, I was exactly the same. Yeah, I was the same, but I don't know.
I guess that's why we're
both
here.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, that's a hard thing when your kids are not readers, but
Trace, what do you do when you can't read?
I don't read. I never get that.
Who is he?
You're like, I heard what we did without reading. I'm like, I did just fine.
Yeah.
Did you?
It's questionable. And I'm the critical one.
We're so well settled, you know, too.
Oh,
so,
totally fine. Really got it together here.
Yeah, even as a tween or even younger, like I preferred reading to people to even then.
Oh, absolutely. Like
so
even
weird.
I would go to my best friend growing up's house and she would literally like, if you bring a book, I'm gonna like freak out. Like, do not bring a book. But then we would just sit on the bed and play, like hit the pillow back and forth. And I'm like, I could be reading.
This is essentially what we're telling everybody. We are super fun people, even from a young age, is what we're telling folks. How do you handle writer's block?
You rewrite a whole series. No, I just, when I honestly, I knock on freaking wood. I have too many stories in my head to have writer's block yet, but there are times where I feel stuck by the pressure. Like want something to be good so bad that it like locks me. So it's a different version of writer's block, but I just read something that I love. Like I read a chapter of a book that I know I love that makes me want to write and makes me want to read. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I need to not take myself so seriously. But for me at least, when I really think about like, even today, it's my publication day and I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. But at the same time, I'm like terrified because it's like this thing that I really, really spent a lot of literally blood, sweat, and tears on is out in the world, and you guys are reading it and reviewing it, and it just makes me want to hide. But at the same time, I can't not write. Like I don't know what I would do in the world if I can't tell stories. So I would just try to not take it seriously, even though I know it's easier said than done. And if you have that feeling in you that you want to write something, writer's block is definitely temporary and there's a way out of it. So read a chapter of your favorite book, listen to your favorite music, watch a movie that you haven't watched in a long time that made you feel something, and wait for the inspiration to come back. Because if you force it, you'll end up rewriting an entire book. And I do not recommend that.
So when you think back to when you started in 2013 to where you are now, I mean, it's a pretty insane career, and it's really only the beginning is what I always tell you. How does it feel to be a best-selling author? Like when you think back at like the trajectory of you know, the past several years, what does that feel like?
It feels, I don't know. It just, I always think of when as a reader, and I read books by my favorite authors who are best-selling authors, I'm just like, oh, I'm so proud of you. You're selling books. So for me, I'm just like, I just think of my like 16-year-old self who had no idea what I was going to do, how I was going to feed myself, how I was going to pay my rent as an adult or what I was going to do. And I'm like, okay, life is, even if I wasn't a bestseller, I still think I would be super satisfied with being able to do what I want to do, because only 1% of people or less get to actually like their job. So I just, I don't know how it feels to be a best-selling author, because I think about it too much. No, but I definitely know that what I'm doing right now feels like exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Do you have a favorite memory or memories of your career so far?
Oh yeah. I mean, so many. Oh, my favorite things are signings. So even, best selling and the book selling and stuff, that stuff, of course it matters. And I know I'm in a very fortunate place to say like, that doesn't matter to me. And that's something that I wish more of authors could say. But for me, it's like when I went to Europe for the first time, I was so confused why on earth all these people were waiting in a bookstore. And I just could not believe. So it's like the connection. Like, I'm so proud of the connection that reading, not just my books, but in general, all of my friends are book people except Trace. And all of these friendships that I've seen amongst women from especially the romance community, all of the friendships and all of the connections and all of the readers that have become friends, and seeing, moms with their daughters and both of them coming in with my books and bonding over the story, and having newspaper, like super serious male journalists be like, oh, teenagers don't read. Why do they read your book? And I'm like, you don't know anything about teenagers, first of all. And second of all, they are reading, and that's why there's 1,000 of them waiting in line. So it was that I was like, whoa, people, because it's one thing to consume someone's work and read it, especially online. It's like we consume, now it's even worse with TikTok, but we consume data in seconds. So reading someone's book and then spending your time, like hours of your time, to meet them just because they wrote something that you connect with, that has been, even though I can't name a specific signing that is, the best memory of my career, but pretty much every time I go in a bookstore and there's people there.
That tour you went on, I remember the videos, like so many people showed up for you. It's pretty amazing.
It's, I still, almost every time now I'm like, I miss you guys. It's been a long time, but every time I kept being like, wow, there's still people who are still coming here. And at a certain point, some of them, I like recognize them and I'm like, oh, you've been here since the beginning.
Someone says, Bree from North Carolina asks, or she says, big fan, can't wait to read this one. You are an incredible writer. What else do you like to do in your free time?
I like to read. No, but I like to read. Watch shows. I mostly watch Korean dramas. You guys should try them if you haven't. I have a highlight on my Instagram to link you to the ones you should watch. I spend time with people that I love. And yeah, that's all. I'm really not that interesting of a person, but I like to read, watch series, mostly with subtitles, and
listen to music,
and hang out with people that I love.
Lots of TikToks.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah. Cheers. Let's see. Lauren asks, any advice to someone new in the industry?
Yes. One, there's no one way to be published at all. There are even more ways than when I started. I have so many. Having an agent is helpful, but not necessary. You are the only person who is going to believe in your writing, besides your readers, if you have readers already, the way that you do. So if you send your manuscript to a publisher or an agent and they don't like your book, that's one person's opinion. Doesn't matter. Move on. Submit it again and again and again. Some of the best writers I know as a reader took 10 years to get published. It just takes that one person to believe in your story. Doesn't mean you're a bad writer. Doesn't mean that you'll never make it in this town. That's not true. I think just being open-minded, researching the newest ways to be published, because every couple months publishing changes and the content that we're consuming changes. So if you feel like you want to write, that's all you need. Just follow that feeling and keep going. And a million people are going to tell you no, but it just takes one yes.
Good answer. Maggie asks, when did you make writing your full-time job, and any plans for a podcast?
I mean, the amount of times I get asked about a podcast,
Podcaster Anna Todd?
I don't know about a podcast, you guys. This is what it would be like, just so you're aware. This is what it would be like. I don't know about a podcast. I won't say
Although
no,
if you
but
did a podcast on K-drama and K-pop, like, we could fill hours of content.
That might be,
but maybe no one's interested.
I don't know. That it's a big market. We'll see about the podcast. I'm not sure, but just so we're clear, this is literally what I would be like on a podcast. So I don't know if you know that that's what you want. But what was the other part?
I forgot to. When did writing become your full-time job?
So writing became my full-time job about a year and a half after I started writing on Wattpad. But at the time, my full-time job was babysitting my friends who were Army wives' kids, taking classes online full-time because, again, I was married to someone in the Army, and there's just I have a special needs child. And when you have a special needs child and one income in your family, it's nearly impossible to get childcare. So I wasn't even able to work from home or work outside of my home if I wanted to. So working a full-time job wasn't I couldn't do that because I have a son with autism and epilepsy, and special needs childcare is insanely ridiculously expensive. So for a 22-year-old, it wasn't a possibility. So my plan was to, U.S. government, please don't come after me, but I took full-time classes online and got FAFSA money and lived off of that. But eventually when I signed with Wattpad to kind of, maybe we'll be able to publish this, because this was all very new for Wattpad as well. And then I thought, maybe I'll be able to stop taking full-time classes and take care of my child and write 12 hours a day. So it was kind of a while, but I was writing, half of the day, literally. So
speaking of exciting things, not including podcasting perhaps, but do you want to talk a little bit about Frayed Pages and kind of what that has meant to you? Because I know it means a lot and there's so many exciting things coming.
Yes. I mean, I wish I cannot wait till the day. When I'll make a podcast is when I can sit down and tell you guys all of the things that I'm not allowed to tell you yet. I have had quite the journey in publishing, from writing online to having a major publisher and an incredible editor, to self-publishing, to being like, what is the middle ground here? My editor at SNS, or Simon Schuster, was leaving. It was a whole thing. And I was like, I don't know if I want to stay at a big publishing house, because a lot of people I knew were self-publishing, and I wanted more control on the business end. And the more I learned about the business side, I just thought, okay, there's got to be a different way for me. And I said, by the time I'm 40, I want to have my own imprint, which at the time when I first said it, I totally was just like, it was a dream, but like I didn't actually think it was going to happen, but I hoped it would by the time I was 40. And then I tried to think of, what that meant in real life. And then a couple years later, flash forward, all the stuff I can't really say, but then Wattpad, I went to Wattpad and basically was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I have a couple of routes I could go here, but I think it makes the most sense for it to be, kind of with my home base, which is Wattpad. I needed to find a publisher. And distribution and all the things that self-published authors, it's really hard to get. So we teamed up, and now I have my own imprint called Frayed Pages by Wattpad Books. And we are basically kind of a no rules imprint where authors' opinions are important. And for me, you know, as a reader, I always went to the bookstore and felt like I saw the same names over and over and over. And when I started meeting outside of the romance industry, when I started meeting more and more, you know, really professional, or not even professional, just different genre authors, all they talked about was their alma mater and their agent and this. And I'm like, okay, I don't have any of that. I didn't have an agent for the first like 6 years of my career. I mean, Wattpad acted as my agent, but I didn't have an actual like agent. And I just, I want to make a place where you don't have to have a literary degree. You don't have to, you know, be querying for 10 years. You can just be a writer and submit your book to us.
So I have some really hard questions. You ready?
No.
Yes, you are. Okay. Name a BTS song for each following character.
Whose question is that? Is that Aaron? I feel like that's Aaron.
It's from Team Anna Todd, I will say that. But I think,
man.
and I have a series of some brilliant questions. So just, you know, get ready.
Okay. Like personality wise? Okay.
For you to define.
Right.
But yes, I would say what embodies each.
What the hell? Oh my God, that's the hardest question ever. That takes like at least an hour of research. I will say
I have to
that
pull up a playlist or something.
Yeah, I will say that. Oh God, Austin is definitely a JK for sure. Definitely.
Yeah, I see that.
Karina.
But explain, because he's trying to figure out
who he is. He's also really cool and doesn't even have to try. Oh God. Karina is, I guess, more of a Jimin because she's like more of a Jungi, I think. This is the hardest question of my life. I'll come back to you with answers.
I cannot believe you're saying that.
This is really hard, to be honest, because this is like.
I'm looking at playlists. Like, it's very hard.
It's too hard, honestly. It's too hard because I need to like actually think about it because these are my children, my babies, and this is a big decision.
Which one, BTS or the following characters?
Oh God.
Oh my goodness.
You know what, you guys, if you're watching this, you tell me who you think while I do my research.
You're gonna think of it like at 2 a.m. You're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this is it.
Yeah, because there's so much that goes into that.
I'm gonna ask you this question tomorrow. Be ready with an answer.
Okay. So. I also want you to answer it since you read it.
I'm not the author here. I don't have to answer any. It's all you.
Oh, God. Well, when Trace reads it, he can answer.
When Trace reads it.
Which means
which BTS member do you think would enjoy reading the following? I feel like we do have an answer to this, and I say we because I think we'll agree.
Jimin.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. He's a romance lover.
Yeah. Let's see.
But also, please, if you're watching this, do not read any of my books.
Someone asked, and I'm going to edit the question. They asked, when are you taking a trip to Korea? And I'm going to ask it, when are we taking a trip to Korea? South Korea. Soon.
Mm-hmm. Soon.
Soon.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Aaron's question. I don't know if we can ask that.
I don't know if we can ask that. Kristen, can we ask that? Read this one.
The last question. We need a publicist check.
No, let's go back to the reader ones.
What about these scenes?
That's
the end.
Do you have a favorite scene in the book that you wrote?
Yeah, the kitchen with the water jug, which makes no sense if you don't read it. But if it's the first time that they both let their guard down, and it's like the middle of the night, it's dark in the kitchen, and there's a water jug, and they're bonding, and then it's very simple, scene. It's not, super action packed scene, but it's the first time that they're both truly vulnerable with each other. So for me, it's my favorite.
So some questions. You talked about K-dramas earlier. What are some of your favorites? And is there one or two or three that you wish that was such a good story. I wish I would have written the book to that.
All of them. I really do want someone, I've been trying to figure out a way, but I want someone to find a way to write like a series off of these stories because they're so good.
But do you have like a few like top three that you would recommend? I know what
top three
our number one is.
I mean, there's just too many, but my first top ones, I would say, the one you should really watch right now is called Uncontrollably Fond. You can find it on Viki. And there's also Crash Landing on You, which people, including myself, really love. And that's sort of when I recommend to my readers of what to start with, that's the one to start with. It's Okay to Not Be Okay is really good. Itaewon Class is really good. Literally on my Instagram, just go under my highlights and I have like at least 30.
Goblin.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Goblin. Goblin's my number one.
Number one. I was going to say that's our number one.
Goblin's the best one. I don't know. They're all the best, but just watch them all.
Yeah, but I feel like Crash Landing is a good entryway K-drama. And they fall in love in real life and they just announced they're having a baby. So big stuff.
They're really cute.
They're so cute.
Is that for this or for you?
It's all a plethora of potential questions.
Okay.
Any kind of weird experiences that you've had in your career or at a signing or funny even?
Yeah, more funny because
Yeah.
I think like when people are excited, I don't want to say like it was weird because that just feels mean because people when they're excited over something, it's like who knows what they will say or do. But I have had sometimes where I'm like, okay, this is intense, but in a good way. And as a fan girl myself, I totally understand all fan behavior. So nothing is really weird to me, to be honest. And I welcome all the weirdness from fan girls around the world.
Do you have any hidden talents?
I wish. No. I literally don't have any talents except for writing. I can write. That's all I got, literally.
Where are you finding inspiration these days?
Real life, I think. I'm finding a lot of inspiration in real life these days.
Where do you want to go that you've never been?
Everywhere. Thailand, Bora Bora, Korea. Literally, I want to go to every single place in the world. Greece.
Yes.
Definitely Greece.
Yeah, that seems like a beautiful place to go. Let's see, there's so many questions. I'm trying to pick. So in real life, you've talked about you've moved back to LA. What are you most excited about with your move?
To be back in LA in general. I really tried to fight being an LA person, but I just am, all of my friends who are like family to me, except like one, are in LA. During the pandemic, when I decided to move to Seattle, I thought like, I just want to be away from people. I want to live in the woods. I'm super obsessed with the idea of living in trees, basically. So I decided to move my entire life to a city where I didn't know anyone and live in the forest, literally. And it was great for like 2 months. And then I was like, oh, there's no one here. I don't know anyone and so I'm just excited to be back in LA in general, to be around my friends who are like my chosen family. And just to have, like, I feel very comfortable in LA. It's the only place I've ever been that I felt like home.
So as we kind of start to wrap up, share a little bit about kind of what's next. What should we be excited about that's coming up? Without spoilers?
I know, I'm like, without spoilers, I feel like half the time I'm just telling you guys, like, I'll tell you soon, and then it's like 6 months later before I can tell you. But I've been working really, really hard on multiple producing projects. I think I can say that. I just can't say what they are. But I've been working really. Most of my time these days, honestly, goes to my producing career. So I've been, I can say I've been acquiring projects that aren't just written by me for a couple years. I just haven't said anything about them yet because it's not the time.
You can't.
I can't yet, but that's what I've been doing lately. Is I really, really through my experience, good and bad, I've learned a lot, and now I'm exploring this career as a producer, which is really, really fun.
And you've got 2 more books in the series too.
And 2 more books in the series, and 6 more graphic novels.
So a few things.
Couple things. I've been a little busy, guys. Just a little busy. And a surprise book that I can't say because it's a surprise, but a lot of things.
Surprise! Awesome. Well, I think that's
Thank you guys
Yeah.
for listening to my podcast. See you later. No, really, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy this book. If you don't, it's okay, but I hope you do. And if you purchase this book through this sighting, you will get a book plate. Well, that will be signed. Some of these aren't signed, but they're really pretty and they match the cover. So I hope you enjoyed listening to whatever that was. No, I'm just kidding. But
Our
really,
podcast.
thank you. And happy 11th book baby to us, 10th or 11th book. Thank you for still being here.
happy book birthday.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Bye.
Hey, this is John Acuff, New York Times best-selling author of 7 books and someone who's done a live signing. If you like the one you just watched, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. It's full of amazing authors having great conversations and signing books for viewers just like you. So make sure you subscribe, and thanks for watching today.